Hey, it's Rabbi Greg here, and welcome to Torah Tuesday. Now, last Tuesday, when we finished the last parsha, it was Mount Sinai. There was all this thunder and lightning. Uh, God came and spoke the Ten Commandments. And so now we're going to pick up the action in the next parsha today. I'm going to share, and it is called Mishpatim. Okay. Again, it's the second word, and these are the rules that you shall set before them. So we're at Mount Sinai, and Moses is being given all of these instructions. And after the Ten Commandments, these high level principles, now the divine is giving Moses this set of rules. And this is a really different genre. This is a really big change from what we saw last week because we've been in this narrative all of Exodus, some of the best narrative, some great storytelling. And now all of a sudden we get this long list of rules. So it's a pretty big change in terms of the literature, in terms of the writing from what we've seen. So I'm going to keep this first sentence because I want to, when I do the Torah study on Torah Saturday, okay, here's our Mishpatim Torah Tuesday source sheet that I've started. I want to say, these are a bunch of rules. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's see if any of these kind of jump out at us. Okay, so we're starting with a bunch of things about slavery and male slaves and female slaves. That's a little cringy, which in and of itself isn't a reason not to study it, but it just doesn't grip me for today. So then there's killing someone uh, directly or by accident. And so here's an interesting one. One who insults their father or mother shall be put to death. Okay, well, this one I want to dig into a little bit more because first I'm going to save it. And the reason why is that we don't do this anymore. I mean, the most orthodox community in the world would never put someone to death for insulting a parent. And so there's a lot of talk about, oh, you can't just pick and choose what's in the Torah. You have to follow it literally. Well, that actually, no one would say you have to follow it literally, but you can't just ignore parts of the Torah. So what happened to this? Why is this something we no longer follow? Okay, so let's take a look at the commentary. Whoever curses their father and mother. Um, this is kind of getting into shall be put to death, okay, by stoning. So this is just kind of getting into details about how you would put someone to death. Like this is a stoning death as opposed to something else. I'm honestly very dubious that I'm going to use this, um, but I'll keep it and I'll just take a look, see if anything more interests. Okay, well, what does it mean to curse? That's not very interesting. A lot of my favorite commentators don't comment on this. So I think I'm just going to let this one go. I don't think this is worth kind of digging into further. Okay, so, all right, some more. You've hurt someone. Is it a slave? Oh, wait a minute. Here's something. Um, but if other damage ensues, the penalty should be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, etc. Well, this is really a big one. So I'm going to save this. I am sure you have heard this concept of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and often it is um, anti-Semitism kind of in the form of legitimate criticism, often by Christian authorities, saying, well, see, look at this really bad Old Testament. And if we live according to an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and we'd have a world of toothless and eyeless people. So let's see, what did the rabbis have to say about this? Like earlier, we saw this, well, what does it mean? Okay, you kill a parent, well, you kill them by stoning. And so clearly the commentary seemed to take that seriously. So What are the circumstances that we would pluck out somebody's eye? Okay, so if you blind someone, but how much value would it be? So all other cases, okay, I have to read this again because I'm not understanding this. If one blinded the eye of his fellow man, he has to pay him the value of the eye, i.e., pays him how much the value would be diminished if he were to be sold as a slave. Okay, so this is about financial restitution. There is no way that it is talking about uh, plucking out someone's eye. What about Ibn Ezra? We can't interpret according to the plain meaning. What is the equivalent blow? What if it's partial versus so again, here's another one where it seems that um, this is about financial restitution. So I'll add this one to the sheet as well. Okay, well, I'm looking for some kind of explanation for like the plucking out of the eye. Let's see if we look under the Midrash, like the Mechilta. This was second century commentary. It's a little bit of a longer form. It's much earlier than Rashi and Ibn Ezra, who are like 11th, 12th century. Maybe by then they'd become civilized, but at an earlier state, we were really advocating plucking people's eyes out. Okay, Mechilta, an eye for an eye, one pays damages, the value of his eye. Wound, for man it's his neighbor. Just as the wound spoken of, he will pay for his idleness and the cure. So if you injure somebody and they can't work, you have to pay them for their lost wages. Okay, so this is definitely worth digging into a little bit more. So we've gone back earlier in time. It is still all about paying restitution. You remember last week we talked about the Targum. That's was a translation from even earlier than the Mechilta of the Hebrew into the Aramaic. That was the language that everyone could speak. Okay, so let's look at the Targum because that's an even earlier source. And let's see, we also get an interpretation. How did they think about it? The Targum, the value of an eye for an eye, the value of a tooth for a tooth, the value of a hand for a hand, the value of a foot for a foot. I'm going to add this to the sheet. Okay, so this seems pretty clear, and I want everyone to know and understand this. At no point did Judaism talk about maiming people if you maimed someone, whether you were in a fight and somebody lost an eye. Did you have to pay restitution? Absolutely. But it was not some kind of cruel, thirsty punishment where you were cutting off people's hands or poking out people's eyes. And people that claim that that's what Judaism stands for are either misinformed or they're just deliberately looking for this excuse to put down Judaism. And unfortunately, this is kind of an idea which has made its way into the culture. It's one of these anti-Semitic tropes, which even people who don't consider themselves anti-Semitic or would not dream of like hurting someone because they were Jewish, they can still buy into this idea, which lowers the how can I put this? It kind of sort of makes the morality of Jewish people suspect. So I'm really glad we found that. We had a chance to put that one to bed. Let's see what else we have. Okay, if you poke out a slave's eye, they get to go free. Okay, what if you knock out a tooth? So if an ox gores someone, um, Here's what you do. If a ransom is imposed to redeem an owner's life, oh, that's still about yeah, if you have like an ox that's always goring people and the owner doesn't take action to stop it, and the ox kills someone, the owner could be liable and put to death. Um, okay, but if an ox gores a slave, uh, you have to pay 30 shekels to the master. Okay, here's an interesting one. If someone opens a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the one responsible for the pit must make restitution, paying the price to the owner but keeping the dead animal. All right, so I'm just going to keep these because this kind of reinforces this idea of financial restitution. Like there was quite a bit that we talked about in the sections that I just kind of breezed through really quickly about financial restitution. So we'll just kind of keep these two. All right, let's keep looking at the the codes more about what you do with oxes and all this stuff about oxes. It kind of tells you what was important. This was a society that of people that had livestock, and these were things that happened. Okay, a thief is seized while tunneling. All right, that's some details around that. That's not interesting me. A fire is started and spreads to thorns. One who started the fire must make restitution. That might be interesting for a different one, a different Torah study. But today, I've kind of been focusing on like human interactions. So I'm going to keep going and seeing if there's more about human interactions. Right, there's more about donkeys and borrowing in animals. Um, if a man seduces a virgin for whom the price has not been paid and lies with her, he must make her his wife by payment of a bride price. Okay, well, there's something that could be said there, but that's creepy and cringy. Sometimes I'll go into the creepy and cringy. I'm not into that today, and that's not what kind of it doesn't feel consistent. And if the father refuses to give him to her, he must pay the price, our bride price for virgins. Okay, still really cringy. Um, I'm sure there's stuff to be said there. You shall not tolerate a sorceress. Okay, that's juicy. That one's really juicy. Let's take a look at the Hebrew. Mechashe fa lo techaye. So, chaf shin pei. This is practicing sorcery. So this is one who practices sorcery. Lo techaye. Okay, well, there's chet. Uh, uh, Chai, we see right here in the middle. That means life. So you must not tolerate a sorceress, but we see life here. So if you look at it literally, the literal is let live a sorceress. Okay, so I'm sold. We're going to dig into this. I'm going to add it to the sheet. Let's just check different translations. Okay, the current is the JPS 2023. I think it's very vanilla. It tends to flatten a lot of the key ideas. And it's sort of softening this, I think. Let's see what other ones. A sorceress you are not to let live from Everett Fox. You shall not suffer a witch to live. You shall not allow a witch to live. Um, okay, this is interesting. Here's one that says um, she has to be taken care of in a Beit Din or a court. Shall not suffer a sorceress to live from 1917. Okay, so um, let's get into this a little bit. Like, is this one of these? Maybe this is like the eye for an eye thing. Maybe this is just a metaphor for something. Let's see what they have to say. So let's start with Rashi, our 11th century commentator. You shall not suffer a wish to live. This does not mean that you may kill her, okay, but she should be put to death by the court. And both men and women who practice witchcraft are included in this law. But in using the feminine term, it's like, well, it's mostly the women who practice witchcraft. All right. Oh man, that reminds me. I'm going to add it to the sheet. And, is that true? It's mostly the women practicing witchcraft. This reminds me of a story. Okay, I knew there was some reason why this one interested me. So a friend of mine, she in college, she went to a school in the Northeast and they had a ski team and she was captain of the ski team. She did really well. She may have won some championships. And then years and years later, when her kids were teenagers, she became the coach of the high school ski team. And she was the only woman coach. And the men coaches who were kind of an old boys club and there'd never been a women coach before, gave her a really hard time. And at this one meet, they accused someone on her team of various impropriety. And when this was all being discussed, she mentioned that, well, the guy from the other team, the one who had lost, he fell. She's like, what does I have to do that? And the coach said, oh, well, you got in his head and you freaked him out so much that he fell over. And so when she told me this story, I'm like, oh my God, he's accusing her of being a witch. She cast a spell on this teenage boy and he fell during the ski race. There's no other explanation for him falling. The only way this could have happened was the female coach on the other team cast a spell on him and made him fall. So, people just come up with stuff against women. And I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's any commentary about, like, is there some politics involved here? Sometimes the rabbis kind of reinterpret things in the Torah that are a little bit more favorable to women. Sometimes they'll interpret things in ways that are less favorable to women. So I'm really curious, like, where does this go? Okay, drink time. I live in Colorado. It is so important to hydrate. Anyway, Rashi, um, they're saying, yeah, it could be a male, but most witches are women. Okay, so that's not kind of getting into the um, sort of political stuff that I'm thinking about. Okay, Ibn Ezra. Oh, well, we find out about the sorceress after this seduction because we have someone unlawfully seducing someone for their lust, and others satisfy their cravings through magic. Well, that's like, I don't know, it's just so weird. Be curious what people might think about that. Let's see what else we have. Ramban. Um, so he's getting into, oh man, so it's positive commandments, negative commandments. That's minutia of halakha, of Jewish law. I don't get into that stuff. That does not interest me. If you're Orthodox, that really may have some meaning for you. Let's see. His kuni. This looks pretty similar to the last one with the positive and negative commandments. There's tons and tons of commentary, but none of this is in English. So, okay, Rabbeinu Baha. I like him because he does some mystical interpretations. He has legal interpretations and grammatical and philosophical. So let's see what he has to say. So, the whole issue of sorcerers and their activities, phenomenon which ought to separate the distinct, um, they're kind of illegally, it's almost like this is a scientific explanation. Well, they're linking the higher world with our world, and that's not something you should do. Um, So I don't know. This is way more than I want to get into, but okay, here we're back to kind of most of these are women, and some of the activities attributed to the sorcerers are put in women. All right, so I would have to edit this way back, and this may not make it into the Torah commentary, but there is that sort of new, almost scientific explanation for what the sorcerer is doing that I'm kind of interested in. And let's see, I'm still not finding the kind of political connection. Rashbam was Rashi's grandson. So women would practice witchcraft in hidden places. So this formulation tells the authorities um, not to just leave them in their hiding places. They should be hunted down until found. Okay, so here we're aggressively going after these witches, these women who are doing these illicit activities. That's kind of creepy and cringy, but I just have a feeling that I am not going to find what I'm looking for here. I'm going to see like here's something I haven't done in Torah Tuesday yet. So this is our first time we're going to look at the sheets. Now, sheets are what I'm creating right now, where I'm taking sources and I'm putting them in a sheet, and then we use them for Torah study. But I can look and see where have other people put this same passage on their sheet. So here is um, something about magic, artificial intelligence. Can Jews go to hardware in our magical practices allowed? Sorcery, categories of power and otherness, magic and sorcery, Jewish Halloween, birth amulets, ethical eating, Jewish magic, feminine theology too, witches and wicked women. Okay, well, that's why you want to have good names for your sheets. Because this, it's by Natasha Mann, so um, it's an interesting title, Into the Biblical World, Witchcraft, Prophecy, and You. I'm curious who Natasha Mann is before I um, kind of spend more time digging into this. Okay, it doesn't say who she is. Um, Let me just Google her. Okay, interior lighting, equity partners. Uh, Rabbi of New London Synagogue. Okay. So she's a rabbi in New London, queer rabbi. Okay, she's got to think about the world differently. A lot of queer Torah is challenging power structures, which is kind of what I'm interested in. Oh, and she went to Ziegler. Okay, Ziegler really turns out fantastically creative rabbis who really know how to interpret the text and know how to interpret it in a modern context. So this is definitely someone who I am interested in learning from. Okay, oh, and I guess I ran into her once before because I am following her. Okay, so what was this? Okay, feminine theology two, witches and wicked women. You shall not let a sorceress live. Okay, yup. Um, oh, so this is interesting. I had forgotten about this. So in the book of Samuel, King Saul was bumming out pretty severely, and he wanted to go find someone who could talk to ghosts because God wasn't answering him. So maybe I could talk to the prophet Samuel. And the woman says, Saul has banned the use of ghosts and familiar spirits. And he says, no, you won't get in trouble. And she says, bring up the prophet Samuel, who kind of anointed Saul as king, and then told Saul that Saul had messed up and that God was going to replace them with someone who became King David. And so, oh, this is so interesting because Here, the king is breaking his own law against consulting with witches. And oh, this is, I think, the Witch of Endor. So I'm not going to read this whole thing right now, but let's see. And boom, I can add this to my sheet. So, okay, so, and I hope that it will lead me back to this sheet. So that's a great connection. That's something kind of interesting. Um, okay, so here is something from Ezekiel. I don't know this story as well. Um, here's someone talking about, it's more about female prophets in Ezekiel, heretics and outsiders, the struggle over female power in Western religion. Um, My first point is simple. The existence of a canon or canonical tradition implies the existence of outsiders and heretics. I think that's just kind of interesting. I'm going to keep it, may or may not make it in. But I think what I take from that is that they're defining there's the insiders, there's the people who um, are allowed to like pray and talk to God and understand things. And then there's these sorceress women who are outsiders. Maybe they should be, but maybe there's something legit here. But there's just something about this that strikes me as more of a power play. So here's something about pregnancy and childbirth. And people were sort of afraid of, oh, this is really interesting. Wow, this is some kind of image. So this is like oh, it says an Egyptian woman shown with an unbound hair. This is a little bit farther afield, but I think this is really interesting, and maybe I'll just link to. Okay, so here's something that's kind of interesting in Miriam's prophecy was questioned, so it's kind of general undermining of female power. The world of rabbis, legitimate and illegitimate magic. Yeah, so this is kind of what I'm looking for. Okay. So a warlock does things, both a man and a woman. Why to state a witch? Because most women, because, oh, not only that most witches are women, but women all know about this witchcraft stuff. So that is just so sexist. Thank you, rabbis. Um, all right, that one doesn't interest me. All right, here's some incantation to do against witches. All right. Uh, more about incantations. Uh, okay, different ways you kill people who do witchcraft, whatever. Okay, now what in the world is this? It's some kind of image. This looks like Hebrew writing. Incantation bowl inscribed in Aramaic. Oh man, so yeah, there's a lot of like, this is like a whole thing. I'm not going to include it in the Torah study, but these incantations are really interesting. Um, these incantation bowls are found all over the area in the archaeology. And this was like magic that was practiced by all kinds of people using Hebrew. So, okay, so this is the text from an incantation bowl. All right, that's a little too far afield. More about the incantation bowls. Okay, so Levitas was a great Jewish philosopher. Female experience is other for the male experience, not only because of its different nature, but because, in a certain sense, otherness is in its nature. Yeah, men don't get women. Okay. Uh, heretics and outsiders. Um, okay, so this was the person who said that there's insiders and outsiders, and she's tying it to female power. So I'm going to add this to the sheet as well. Okay, so um, I feel a great debt. Who was it? This was Rabbi Natasha Mann. So she did all of this research and stuff that I had not even, I would never, at least not quickly. I don't have those sources. I couldn't include it in a Torah study. Let's take a look at our sheet though, because I think we have a really good um, set of things to study. So here are the rules. Father and mother should be put to death. Okay, put to death by stoning. I might just cut these out because um, I'm not sure that it's a point I want to make. Let me get into this eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And this was, we got very clear from sources from all different time periods that this was financial restitution. There was at no time, in no way, this thought that we should be maiming one another or we should be cruel enough to cut off someone's hand if someone cuts off my hand by accident or even in a fight or something. Okay. Targum, super early source. This is what they thought. There are no sources from any time period that I can find that talks about eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Um, okay, you dig a pit, you're irresponsible, someone else's ox dies, you got to pay for it. You break it, you pay for it. You saw it right here. It's in the list of codes from Mount Sinai. Okay. Then we get into, I think, the really meaty topic. You should not tolerate a sorceress. Um, a lot of, women practice sorcery more than men from Ibn Ezra. And then later, I don't think it was from Bahia, it was from Rashbaum. Rashbaum said you got to hunt them down. Somewhere it was like, oh yeah, and the women are also more familiar. Like all women know about the sorcery. Like men, we don't know anything about it, but women, they're all kind of complicit in this. So this to me smells very political. So I did not find any sources. So I started looking for these other source sheets. Okay, this doesn't tell me that I got this from that other source sheet. So I'm going to just say, so I'm going to make uh, like a heading or something, and maybe I'll put a link back to her source sheet to sort of say this is where I got these ideas. And one is right in the Jewish Bible, we see men breaking their own rules to use sorcery when it suits them. And um, then we get some of this kind of political type commentary. There's insiders and outsiders, um, delegitimization of female prophets. Oh, here it is in the Sanhedrin in the Talmud. Um, yeah, warlocks are not would get executed too, but we say a witch because all women are kind of friends with witches. Okay, woohoo! Thank you for that. Um, may or may not include this from Levitas, um, making the point that a woman is other. I think it's a good point. And then kind of a general discussion about how were women treated in the canon? Were they distinguished? I think this will be an interesting point to kind of close with. So I'm going to close the share for now. We're going to bring Torah Tuesday to a close. Thank you so much for watching. Please join us on Saturday for Torah Saturday, where we're going to use the final version of the source sheet to do a Torah study. So go over to rabbigregmarcus.com, join the email list, and you can get the Zoom link to join us. Also on the American Musar channel, you can find the whole folder with all of the past Torah Tuesdays and Torah Saturdays. And if you're still watching, I have a favor. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel and share it. But if you made it this long, I hope it means you liked it. And if you like it, YouTube will and the other social media will show it to other folks and they'll get to see it too. Thanks so much. Bye.